You know, everyone, I think I finally solved everybody's sleeping problems in the world. All you have to do is put on this movie and it'll bore them all to sleep. Problem solved. Hello and welcome back to another midnight showing. As always, I'm Kelly and I just got out of Huntsman, the Winter War, aka Frozen, the discounted version. Okay, if you've actually seen the movie, you know that that's not necessarily true, but it really is. Let's face it, this movie would not exist if not for the fact that Frozen made a bajillion dollars. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that whatsoever. What I'm saying is that this movie just did nothing with it. If there is one word that can sum up this movie in a non-spoiler version for you, it is boring. You've seen this movie in 1,000 other movies beforehand. There's no theme or variation here. I will give the movie credit that visually it's very stunning. I mean, it looks beautiful. The CGI work is amazing, especially with gold. Gods of Egypt, take notes. The biggest problem in this movie by far is that it feels like nobody is given anything good to work with. And I do mean that. I will give credit to Chris Hemsworth and Nick Frost that they were able to actually inject some charm into what they're being forced to say. But overall, what they're being forced to say is so generic and uninteresting. I won't say that it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, because this is by far not. It's just so meh. This is paint by numbers fantasy. Hands down, there is nothing creative here, and things just happen because they happened in other fantasy stories. And in truth, that was basically the problem with the first one for me, and I'm not one of the people that liked the first one. I'm apparently one of the few who really kind of hated it. My opinions of the first one are that Chris Hemsworth and Charlize Theron were okay. Everybody else, especially Kristen Stewart, were just ugh. And no, I'm not bagging on her because she was in Twilight. I'm bagging on her because her performance was still as wooden as if she was playing Twilight. Ironically enough, she was the only one smart enough not to sign on to this one. But they really wanted her to come back. That's dipping into the spoiler section a little bit. So before I go into that, I'll just give you my non-spoiler final verdict, which is an honest to God, skip it. If you did like the first one and you are curious about this movie, the best recommendation I could give to you is wait for it to show up on Netflix or on FX, because I guarantee you a week after this movie comes out on DVD, FX Movies is going to be playing it because they love playing the first one. Now moving into the spoiler section, let's actually talk about the plot of this movie. This is both a prequel and a sequel. The only other movie that I've ever seen do that was one of the Pinhead movies, and I think that was 3 or 4. I'll give it credit, it was ballsy, and it did feel like a sequel if they had actually brought Snow White back, but even the fact that they couldn't get Kristen Stewart back. So yeah, the plot of this movie is a little bit jumpy because the first 40 minutes is just establishing that Charlize Theron and Emily Blunt, Ravenna and Freya, are sisters and showing how Freya got her powers because Charlize Theron was a dickhead. Oh, you have no idea how true that is. So the movie begins with Liam Neeson narrating to us that many years ago, before the story that we know, Ravenna had a sister named Freya who was happily about to run off with her husband-to-be and her child that he gave her. And then tragedy strikes. And then Freya, you know what, I'm not calling her Freya. This is Freya, you are not Freya. Discount Elsa comes to find that her husband-to-be has set their child on fire and tried to run away. Didn't get very far, did he? This causes Discount Elsa's powers to finally manifest themselves, and she freezes the bastard for all eternity. And every single one of you know the twist to this story, because you have seen it so many times in different television programs and fantasy movies or non-fantasy movies that you could predict this in your fucking sleep. Ding, ding, ding! It was not the husband at all. Well, technically it was, but he was being mind-controlled by Ravenna. Oh no, I never saw that coming. And that actually does lead me into something that could have actually made this movie really interesting, giving it some layers and actually having a happy ending. But you can't have a happy ending for this thing. I'll get into that in a minute, but just keep that in mind, that event, for a second. So going back into the plot before I talk about that in a second, we follow Discount Elsa as she leaves to find her own kingdom and starts conquering the northern lands and turning them into an icy, frozen tundra. And then she kills off all the villages and steals their children and trains them to be her huntsmen, her elite guard. Which is where we bring in Eric, which is Chris Hemsworth in all of his manliness. Now, the Ice Queen does have but one rule. There will be no love in her kingdom. Gives new meaning to the word abstinence. But oh no, Chris Hemsworth has to follow his mighty penis, and he and Jessica Chastain get together in secret. They're found out, and Jessica Chastain is supposedly killed in front of him. And again, you could predict this thing in your sleep. It turns out that the ice wall he saw it through only showed him a fake death to make him give up hope, and they end up throwing him in an icy river to die a horrible death, which he doesn't because the first movie happened. You could predict this in your sleep. And that takes up about the first 40 minutes of the movie. Now, the prequel side of things, it doesn't contradict anything that happened in the first movie from my memory, but I can honestly God say that I would much rather have just seen a freaking prequel or a sequel. Because the last hour and 20 minutes was a pretty good sequel, but you kind of need that prequel to get the full grasp of what happens in the second part. You know, the words pretty good might be over-judging this movie by a lot. And then thus the actual sequel begins, which is basically Snow White's Prince Charming and his guard hire the Huntsman to find and dispose of the evil magic mirror from the last movie, which has apparently been driving Snow White insane. You know this because of a very, very bad body double, and everybody saying Snow White is not well. Snow White is in this movie. Snow White should have been in this movie, but Snow White was not here because Snow White was over there. Seriously, start a drinking game every time they mention her by name, because by the end of it, you will die of alcohol poisoning. It just makes me wonder why they didn't just recast Kristen Stewart. I mean, was it like this a film thing? Oh, she signed on for the third one, but she just couldn't appear inside of the second one? Was she working on something at the time? The only thing I can think of is that American Psychotic thing that she did with Jesse Eisenberg last year, but that really shouldn't have gotten in the way of this, could it? My personal headcanon is that she realized that this project was dead on arrival and got out before she got forced to get drawn in, which I completely understand. I'm not going to judge you because, frankly speaking, I probably would have done the same thing if I was under a contract. But yeah, the only other returning character other than Prince Charming and Chris Hemsworth and Charlize Theron is Nick Frost as one of the dwarves who joins Chris Hemsworth on this journey to find the magic mirror and dispose of it. And I will give credit where credit is due. Nick Frost and the guy that played the other dwarf, whose name I don't know at the moment, they had a lot of chemistry with each other. And a lot of the humor that comes up inside this movie involves those two. And it feels very natural. It got some good chuckles out of me. Not really laugh out loud, but that wasn't the point of this movie, now was it? And of course, you know the plot, where while they're on the search for the mirror, it turns out the girl is still alive and that it was all an illusion created by the evil Ice Queen to try to break up love once and for all because blah-de, 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 blah. You've seen this before. She's evil, obviously a double agent because she's been tortured and she's going to work for him. But oh no, she changes her ways by the end so they can try to destroy the mirror and take down the evil Ice Queen. Yay. This plot is so so predictable and so just by the book that you really can't get invested in it. If you're going to do a sequel, do something different. Do something we haven't seen before. Because this does lead you up into just stupid ass endings. For the sake of stupid ass endings. What do I mean by this? Well, because we couldn't have just Discount Elsa be the bad person inside of this movie. We have her sister come back as Ravenna in the last 20 minutes of the movie because we had Charlize Theron, we might as well use her, right? Turns out that after she was killed by Snow White, her spirit fled into the mirror and is somehow bonded with it. Now she's like half mirror, half ghost. She can use, as long as the mirror's okay, she's able to basically live, but she's still bound to the mirror's rules, which she should have thought about before she starts taunting Discount Elsa. But yes, this is why the mirror has been slowly messing with Snow White in the background, is because anybody who looks into it can hear Ravenna's voice and her mind manipulation stuff that she was using in the other movie and inside of this one starts to come through. She can start whispering thoughts of like, kill for me, do this, look to the mirror, say the words. Which, as far as evil objects go, that's kind of standard fare if you've ever seen a fantasy movie or a horror movie. Hell, Oculus comes to mind with the whole magic mirror thing. But yeah, after Discount Elsa gets her hands on the mirror, Ravenna starts slowly taking over the kingdom very, very nonchalantly and basically ostracizing her sister out of this whole situation until she finally taunts her to the point where she says, screw you, I want to know what happened to my kid because you are dropping some very, very unsubtle hints that you actually killed her. And she uses the whole mirror, mirror on the wall thing to finally force Ravenna to admit she's the one who orchestrated the whole event. Shocking. And thus the two turn on each other. They start fighting. Discount Elsa is somehow a good person now before she ends up dying and kicking the bucket. Bloody blah blah. They smash the mirror. All's well that ends well. And there's sequel bait also. Golden eagle thingy raven flying away. Yay. Now, I mentioned before that you could have had actually a decent ending on this. And a good little twist that would have been different enough that it would have been awesome. Because the thing that causes Ravenna to go after her sister's child is the whole mirror, mirror on the wall, am I not the fairest one of them all, or stuff like that. And then he repeats back that his sister will have a child who will be fairer and more beautiful than you. Now, you could take this that Snow White is actually Discount Elsa's daughter, meaning that Ravenna didn't actually kill her for whatever reason, or maybe the husband was fighting mind control and couldn't actually kill her, so instead he sent her away and made it look like he killed her. Either way, would have been a much better twist and ending to this movie, especially with the redemption of Elsa becoming kind of the good witch again, and realizing that, well, she was just screwed over by her sister. It wasn't that she was betrayed and her icy heart is icy for no reason. You could actually, have a redemptive arc here and have this literal ice queen become a good person, fight the magic mirror with them, and then have some form of redemption by giving her kingdom up to Snow White's to extend the lands in exchange for actually getting to know her daughter. You got a character who can come back, be redeemed, and then if you have to have your sequel bait ending at the end, wouldn't it be a much better movie to have her in the next movie rather than just kill off Emily Blunt because fuck it? Instead of taking that very, very easily written route, they just went with the regular paint by numbers. Discount Elsa dies, the whole kingdom starts to unfreeze, the children are now free to be governing themselves even though they don't have a government now, and the Huntsman is back together with Jessica Chastain, Sarah, I don't care. It's just so boring. I've seen this done 1,000 times before, and there is no difference here. if this movie really truly wanted to grab me, it needed to actually do more, not just have a bunch of characters banter with themselves as they walk from point A to point B and occasionally get into an action scene. Especially if they end up getting an action scene with goblins who act more like Wendigos. If you don't know what a Wendigo is, I suggest playing Until Dawn. Do it. But I will give credit where credit is due, and the CGI is quite good. The ice effects are a little iffy. I'll give some of them credit. The snow owl that she uses to spy on everything looks really good. Although, can I just say that the ice mask that she has to wear while she's spying on people with this ice owl, if I can find a picture, I'll put it up there, looks really, really, really stupid. But the owl itself looks fine. But the rest of her ice effects, when she like freezes people and puts them in suspended animation, basically, it doesn't work. It really doesn't. Some of the ice glaciers she makes look fine, but most of them are pretty meh. It would have looked better if that actually had been an ice wall there, I guess. Also, there is some questionable CGI with the aforementioned goblin Wendigos when they actually have to fight them to get the mirror back because they steal it. It wasn't bad. They just had a very, very weird design, and then sometimes when they got hit, they moved in some unnatural ways that didn't really fit the caricatures they were being given. You'll know it when you see it. It's just one of those moments where it's like, that might have needed a couple more renderings. But the rest of the movie does look beautiful. The sets they actually built are really, really nice. The CG sets they had to use aren't the worst things I've ever seen in the world. Hell, I go as far as to say they're not even the worst thing I've seen this year. Isn't that right, gods of Egypt? No, I'm never going to let that go. So yeah, my personal final verdict for this movie is, honest to God, skip it. If you are the least bit curious, I wouldn't even say rent this movie. It's not worth spending your movie money on because you're going to see it on Netflix or FX here the second that it comes out on DVD. So you might as well just wait for it to come to you for free. So yeah, that's basically this movie in a nutshell, and that's all for me. Did you enjoy the video? Have you seen Huntsman, The Winter's War? Tell me what you thought about it in the comments below, and maybe we'll get some healthy discussion going. And as always, if you liked what you see, be sure to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and share this video with your friends. Be sure to like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitch and Twitter. And that's it for me, so I'm going to get to work. See you all next time. Now, where do I want to put this? That review is going to take a little while, so I want to get it up somewhere now.